ourselves credit for, and that we don't have the bravery to explain.
Hi everyone out there in the world of the glowing screens, out there on YouTube, Facebook. Welcome, I'm David Pearl. We're here at King's Place, and I want you to invite you to join me in the green room. The green room is an experiment that we're doing to see if we can create something which is a little bit like the backstage of working life. You know, a lot of us spend a lot of the time on screen, on stage, doing our professional thing. And before we know it, when the day is finished, we're straight into domestic stuff. What we wanted to do is create like a gap, a place between your professional life and your private life where we can sort of hang out with other professionals, you know, chill out, have a laugh, and maybe learn something. It's all unscripted, so who knows what's going to happen in there. But there is it's not so much a theme as a kind of topic that it's certainly been on my mind, and I know it's a lot of people's mind out there, which is sort of creativity. This seems to be a time when we need a lot of creativity, but at the same time, it's more difficult in a way because we can't connect as we used to. So that's going to be a kind of theme. And just to let you know, we've got some pretty creative people in the room here. We've got a theatre producer turned author. We've got a ballet dancer turned artistic consultant. We've got a creative cafe owner, a ceramicist, a filmmaker. We've even got an expert on squiggly careers, a woman who knows about what happens when careers go squiggly. And frankly, a lot of our careers have gone squiggly at the moment. So listen out for her. We've also got a young advertising agency school that is listening in and is actually working live to turn a brief that we've set them into an ad. And this is not about work, though. Okay, so what I want you to do is chill out, take off the mask, put down the script. Don't worry about the role you normally play, and just let's have some fun. So in we go. Let's go. Roll ident. So welcome to the green room. Whoa. Online audience, I want to just introduce you to the live, socially distanced and emotionally pure audience that we have here, hand chosen for you. When I was outside, I was talking about you lovely guests, but what I didn't mention was Impropera, who are on stage now. Impropera! We're hoping that Impropera can show a little bit of creativity, because what they do is make stuff up. Don't they, Neil?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
And, you know, for example, there might be a nursery rhyme that people might know. For example, Humpty Dumpty. And there might be a composer that might have written Humpty Dumpty, and that would be?
Mozart.
Mozart. And if that were the case, they might be able to play and sing Humpty Dumpty for a short period of time while the viewing public is watching. No pressure, peeps.
Thanks for that, David. Thank you.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Humpty Dumpty, what happened next?
All the king's horses, all the king's men,
All the king's men,
all the king's horses,
all their horses, all their horses,
and the men, and the men,
men,
and the horses, and the horses, and the horses, and the men,
and the men,
and the horses,
and the men,
and the horses,
and the men,
horses, men, horses, men.
And fantastic. Thank you so much. You see,
10 minutes of that. There's more 10 minutes of that.
that's
the rest of tea.
Horses, men, that's outrageous.
I think you've just identified one of the key aspects of creativity, which is you say yes whether you're prepared or not. And talking of people who aren't prepared or have only just been prepared, I'm coming to Mark Lewis, the Dean of SCA, the School for Communication Arts, 2.0 in Brixton, the world's most successful advertising school. Mark Lewis. Mark Lewis has just invited some of his students to take a brief, which we set here earlier this morning. It feels like this morning. It was actually 10 minutes ago. And the brief was, just remind us, Mark, what was the brief that your students are working on?
It's a really urgent brief, David. We are trying to persuade money to be donated to help the arts by November.
So we're trying to persuade money to be released to freelancers in the arts by November. This was something that, David, you suggested and is close to your heart.
It is. Urgent financial support to freelancers working in theatre by the 1st of November.
And that would, we'd need to see the ads by the end of this show, okay? No pressure.
So we've got a group of students, like we've got half a dozen or so students who are 2 days into their course. No pressure, guys, but there are millions of people, I believe, watching, or at least could be watching. And we've got to deliver really important work in like 40 minutes. What could go wrong?
So if you're on YouTube or on Facebook now and you want to make the students' lives a little less miserable, write something supportive in the comments, please, just because these kids are having a horrible evening. Okay, so moving swiftly on, I just want to introduce, over through the long window, we have Antonia and Ruby, who are temporarily, I suspect, frozen, but they are in Nairobi, and they are listening in from Soul Food Cafe. We'll come to them in a second. Behind me, you see in action living ceramics happening. We've got sculptor Jo Pearl, yes, a relation.
Yes,
and what she is doing is she is going to be ceramically commenting on the conversation that we're having. Which brings me now to the centre of the room and our guest for this evening. Woo! In the blue corner we have, well, I don't know, in the chair in the burgundy corner, we have Kenneth Tharp. Kenneth, hi, how are you doing?
David, I'm good.
We have David Micklem sitting reclining on the sofa of destiny.
Hello.
And the lovely Sarah Ellis from Amazing If and Squiggly Careers. And rather than spend a lot of time unpacking your CVs, which is delightful, but often takes time on sort of talk shows, what we thought we would do, inspired by Jo, is to ask you to represent your careers in clay. And we gave you 3 minutes to do it. How was that?
Fun.
It was great. They came in here, confident, experts in their fields, humbled by a ball of clay. I'm going to ask you, David, because you're closest and you look the keenest, to just take us through how does your ceramic sculpture describe your career to here?
30 years reduced to this.
Yeah.
I think if my career was a 6-word poem, it might be halfway through just starting out. So this squiggly line here is the first half of my career, which was unplanned and slightly chaotic. We're here at the arrow point, and we're moving into a world where I'm doing lots of different things which to anybody apart from me might seem like they're random and unconnected.
Just give us a little bit of a flavour, because there's... yes, tell us.
Some of these balls, I would guess. I often introduce myself as a theatre producer, stage whisper, who doesn't really like theatre. So I'm interested in a different kind of theatre from one where we all sit in the dark and we don't get fiddled with. I'm also a writer. I'm working on my second novel at the moment. I work a lot as a consultant with a range of different arts and cultural clients. And the other balls, I guess, are yet to find their own personality, but they're beginning to form.
Beautiful. We should talk about, at some point, about 64 million artists and about Culture Reset, but we're coming to that, because I can feel poised like a panther-like spring. Kenneth Tharp is urgently wanting to explain how his ceramics... By the way, applause. He runs on applause.
Yes.
Thank you. How grateful are you that you're not sitting in that position? Kenneth, what have you got, and how does it relate to your career to here?
Mine's a conceptual piece, David. I was quite traumatised by the brief and the challenge of it. It's definitely not beautiful, but as you see, it represents a question. Part of that is because I think, look, there's a bit, first bit of your life, who in the room hasn't been asked at some point, what are you going to be when you grow up? Oh. And actually, I think that's probably the least helpful question to ask a young person in today's world, because the idea that anyone will have one career for life, I think those people are going to be by far, the few. Most people end up having either a portfolio career, either when they do several different things at the same time, or they do one different thing after the other. And certainly as the world of employment is going through all the changes and lots of jobs will be lost to artificial intelligence, I think people who remain creative and questioning are also the ones who are more likely to thrive. So the second thing is, I believe that all creative acts begin with a question. You know, sometimes it's just that thing of, well, what if I'm, you know, ... So that's a reminder for me, and these are the kind of things that I think have fed me throughout my career. Secondly, I think, I would encourage any young person who's not sure what they want to do, just until they find that answer, to follow their curiosity and their passion, because that can often lead to those things. You know, I'm reminded of Sir Ken Robinson and Finding Your Element and all that territory. And there was one thing, and the last thing is, look, as we've just heard so brilliantly with, our musicians, today,
Musicians.
yeah.
I love you guys.
I mean, look, I think all creative acts, whether you are the doer or the receiver, have an element of uncertainty about them, where we're not quite sure where this is going, but let's run with it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I want to test this. So I'm going to take you by surprise. I want to ask everyone in the room just to close their eyes for a second and keep them closed. Open your eyes. So listen, that wasn't me showing off. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Italy at a conference about strengthening UK-Italy relationships, and I was asked to speak, in a workshop around the impact of the pandemic and how we could build strong partnerships. And I thought, well, what can I bring to that conversation? And I chose to speak about, I think, the role of the artist, which is often, I think, overlooked, or they're often the last people to be invited to the conversation, especially in such uncertain times as we're living in now. And I thought, rather than just, get at my clipboard, I did exactly what I've just done with you, with the guest there. And then I followed up with some questions, which I can ask you, which is, I suspect some of you may have had, who didn't have a question in their head whilst I was playing? No, see, no one's indicated it. So I suspect you may have had, I don't want to know what they were, I don't need to know what they were, but you might have been saying, well, what is that sound? Is it live? Is it recorded? How's he doing that? What does he think he's doing? I mean, who does he think he is? At the conference, I was thinking people would be thinking, oh, he's probably come to the wrong conference. What the hell? Lots of men in blue suits. But I think it's a reminder, just the lived experience. And when you're in that moment, you don't always know the answer. So what are you going to be when you grow up? What is the answer to this problem that we've just been set? How am I going to respond to the challenge that Dave has just set us? How are the musicians going to respond, with no notice at all to Humpty Dumpty played in the style of Mozart? There's something about that state of being which I think I relate to my career as a creative artist, particularly at the beginning of my career, but even now when I've been doing largely desk-based jobs, but in the cultural sector.
So for you, the not knowing and the willingness not to know is kind of part of it, to feel your way kind of into the future, not necessarily follow the word career is an interesting one, right? When I had a career officer, and when you spoke to Mr. Pateman, for it was he, the maths teacher, if you're out there, rethink. Rethink your role. You're a maths teacher, you just don't know it yet. We'll come to that. There was this idea that a career was a straight line into the future, a kind of, once you had a career, it would like a railway track. But the word career, if you look it up in the dictionary, means to tumble down a mountainside in an uncontrolled manner. So there's this kind of, they were maybe fibbing to us at school about the nature of careers. And they're not straight, they're squiggly, which brings me to Sarah Ellis of Squiggly Careers. What do you have here? And
my ceramic CV, as you put it, so
yeah,
elegantly.
how is this about your career to date?
So at school, my favourite subject was philosophy. And I loved kind of broadly arts type subjects, English literature, philosophy, sociology. And then I panicked and I thought, I'm never going to get a job. and so I did business studies at university, having never done business or economics or anything like that. And not only did I do business studies, I did a degree that was essentially an early version of The Apprentice. I'm very introverted, and that was horrendous. But it got me a very good job very early. And so I started my career, probably very different to lots of people here tonight, working in very big brands, climbing that ladder. And I thought it was all about how far and how fast I could get as quickly as possible. And I was pretty good at it. And I was really ambitious, and I'm still really ambitious, but maybe in perhaps a slightly different way. So the first part of my ceramics is kind of climbing that ladder, kind of clawing my way up, pretending to be someone I wasn't, thinking I needed to be an extrovert, all that kind of not good stuff, to be honest. And I think once I had a realisation that actually, as we've already started to hear this evening, that careers are squiggly. On average, we're going to have 5 different types of career in our working life, and that actually I don't need to be pigeonholed. I don't need to be or look or sound a certain way to be successful. I can define this for myself. And at that point, actually, I still continue to work in some really big companies for a while, but I think I really kind of found my flow in terms of I kind of stopped pretending, and I started enjoying the work that I was doing. I particularly enjoyed helping people with their careers and career development in a really practical way. I'm a big fan of that point that we've kind of already been made around doing. And actually, I was speaking to a philosopher, actually called Roman Krznaric, the other week. He's a brilliant philosopher, and he's a very practical philosopher, which is not always what you get with philosophy. And his best piece of career advice is to act first and think later. And I'm a big advocate of this idea that in our careers, rather than saying what do you want to be when you grow up, or trying to pick or choose a career because of a career advisor, that the best thing we can do is experiment, is to explore, is to follow those things that we find really interesting. And sometimes that will work out, and sometimes it won't. But actually, the more that we do that, and the kind of being braver, I guess, in terms of that, the more likely we are to find work that really fulfills us. And do you know, one of the things, talking about creativity tonight, I've interviewed so many people now about their squiggly careers on our podcast and for our book and for lots of different things. The people who most naturally get squiggly and I think feel most able to adapt and have that resilience are the people who kind of see themselves as creative. And I think everyone is creative. And I saw this quote from a lady called Maggie Smith. So I don't know if some of you have got her book. It's called, I think it's called Moving Forwards. I think I've said that right. She's a poet. And she said this about this year: it's time to try to shift your thinking away from loss and towards growth. Consider this difficult time a gap year between your last life and what might happen next. Think of it as the first messy, brave, hard, exhilarating year of your new life. And that, I'd really recommend Keep Moving. I don't know loads about poetry, but her journey is about, she actually writes about creativity, but also things like her divorce. She's had a kind of tough time in her life. And I think all of our lives are squiggly below the surface. They might not look that way, they might look shiny, they might look perfect, but actually everyone's kind of ebbing and flowing and finding their way. And I think when we start to think about our careers in that way, that's when we kind of start to do work that we really care about.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I don't know, show of hands, who feels as though the current situation, that euphemism, has forced a sort of squiggliness into their lives? Yeah, a little bit? Because I think until recently, certainly the work I've been doing in organizations or whatever, you know, squiggliness was kind of an option, something you might do. But this seems like squiggliness is the must-do at the moment. We've been squiggled. As we say at Street Wisdom, you know, when the world wiggles, wander. There's something about, as you would, maybe we'll ask Ken, we'll get some wisdom from Ken Robinson at some point shortly. But I just want to pick up something you said. You said everyone's creative. It's certainly something which I've held in my career. My first partner is sitting right there, and we set up a company which was to bring creativity out of everybody. David, you run 64 Million Artists, or you founded?
Yeah.
Co-founder.
Yeah.
Be careful, he's just the co-founder.
Just the co-founder.
Yeah. Jo Hunter's the other founder. She's
She
out
is indeed,
there
and
with
she's
a
the
gun.
director.
Okay, co-founder, got that. But just, you know, in essence, what's the heart of 64 Million?
So the contention at the heart of 64 Million Artists is there are already 64 million artists in this country, but that many of us have lost touch with our inner sculptor, silly dancer, den builder, storyteller. I guess the central idea is that creativity is a superpower, and we've all got it, but just many of us have kind of lost touch, connection with that superpower. It's what makes us human. What makes us different from cats and dogs. I'm starting a sentence now, I don't know how it's going to end, and that's a creative process in itself. And anybody who's over the age of 2 is doing the same thing every day in every living and breathing moment they've got. And I think to Sarah's point, if we can embrace that, embrace our inner creative, and rather than sort of suffocate it and say, well, the creatives all live over there in the creative department, and actually I'm an accountant, it's not my job to have ideas, or you know, I'm an administrator, it's not my job to have...
Let me be polemical for a second, because I know that we've all been creative, we also run stuff. You know, I'm going to be a sort of devil's advocate. You know, creatives, doers, perhaps it is a false dichotomy, but perhaps you do need people who are more creative and those who are more doers, or, you know, you need the accountant stuff. Kenneth, you've run an organisation, several organisations, which are, you know, highly creative. You know, is it great for everybody to be going around thinking I'm a creative? Or?
Well, I could answer that in different ways. I think you need different kinds of, you need people with different skills.
Yeah.
And you need, and clearly you don't necessarily want everyone to have the same kind of personality. But I think, I mean, certainly when I took over the place, having not fulfilled a senior management role of that kind, and I was suddenly chief executive.
So the place is just
the
for
place
those who
is a
don't know.
contemporary dance centre, not far from here,
In London, yeah.
which has its own theatre, its own sort of vocational school for training dancers, its own had a resident company. It now has multiple artists. It had a resident company when I was there, and classes for adults and children. So all these different things under one roof. And, you know, 100 full-time employees, 300 or more part-time staff. And, you know, I had to come up with a 5-year business plan within 6 months. Go. And it was intimidating, but I was convinced that I would only have some of the ideas, that a lot of the other ideas needed to and would naturally come from other people in the organisation.
Yes, it's a
so
collective...
I felt part of my role was to just, you know, allow some of that wisdom and intelligence to filter through from the rest of the organisation.
Beautiful.
Whether I succeed or not is another, you know, but that was certainly my mindset.
There's this kind of, you've got to feel your way towards it. There's Arthur Koestler, I think, said, creativity is the one human activity where the teacher and the pupil reside in the same person. There's this sense that there's no one outside you can teach you. You've got to find yourself. But at the same time, as you've said, and this is true of ensembles, like, you know, Improv, the ideas don't really come from you. They come from the space between you. They kind of emerge out of the space between you. Mark Lewis, you are not shy. You're one of the more creative people I know. When you get an intake of people applying to the school, are you looking for creativity? And what does that mean to you?
I mean, we've got to be really careful with words here, David. So words have so much power, and we can give so many different people can have so many different meanings of these words. You've used that word creativity. My definition of creativity is very, very strict. It's the expression of an original idea that provides value. So I'm not looking for creativity when I'm looking at students, because it's very hard under that definition of creativity, the expression of an original idea that provides value, to see that in the way that we select our students. And we have an unorthodox, as you can imagine, an unorthodox selection process. I'm looking really for two things when I'm looking at talent. One, are they going to make me famous? Two, is it going to happen without me damaging their mental health? So in other words, I'm looking at attitude. You know, I want people that can think big and are prepared to get up again and again and again in order to knock that ball, you know, out the park. So it's about resilience, and it's about attitude and aptitude. You mentioned Sir Ken Robinson, rest in peace, earlier, David. You'll maybe be aware that Sir Ken did some research into creative intelligence. Do you know about his research into what makes a creative genius?
Go for it.
He discovered that we are all creative geniuses as toddlers. We're all creative geniuses. If you think about genius, if you think about intelligence on a spectrum, so back in the 80s and the 90s, IQ was a really popular way of measuring intelligence, and people would brag about belonging to Mensa in the early noughties. You know, and if you had an IQ of 100, you were bang average on the IQ score. 99, one below, maybe you get a job at Curry's. 101, one above, maybe get a job somewhere. You know. So that was a scale. It's one way of measuring intelligence. And so Ken spoke about creative intelligence, which we have an abundance of. We are geniuses as toddlers, and we lose as we become teenagers, and we become creative retards by the time we reach our 20s. It's bashed out of us by systems. But these processes can be relearned. Something that Alvin Toffler said is the illiterate of the 21st century won't be those that can't read or write, there'll be those that can't learn and unlearn and relearn. And so creativity can be relearned. We can rediscover what it is to be a creative genius. We just rediscover our childhood in a safe way, but with maturity.
It's like, Mark, it's like Ken is in the room, actually. Those of you know Ken Robinson, who I know many of us do. And actually, I was on the phone with him about 6 months ago, and we were talking about this, and I had a kind of hunch that we should bring his voice in the room. So have you got that? We were chatting about how schools kill creativity. I don't know, Jesse, have you got that audio?
It's as much to do with associative thinking as with linear thinking. It's, schools are divided into subjects. The world is not divided into subjects, just schools are. Schools are divided into 40-minute periods. Life is not divided into 40-minute periods. Children's schools are divided by age group. They are not outside schools. We do not send kids to separate corrals at 4 o'clock and tell them not to mix with people of a different age because bad things happen. Yeah. These are organizational principles. They're not human or epistemological principles. And a lot of what I've been trying to do is simply say, can we create education systems which are consistent with the principles of human flourishing? And that's about relationships, empathy, connection, compassion, seeing things steady and seeing them whole, seeing how things connect, not just how they dissociate from each other.
He's much missed. That man is much missed. I love that when he says, can we create educational systems that are consistent with human flourishing? Sarah, when you meet people in mid-career, if there is such a thing, yep, are they having to unlearn what they learned? Are there any lessons that we need to unlearn at this time when many people are going to have to kink? They're going to have to pivot, yeah.
I think the mid-career crisis is pretty common, to be honest. I think it's often where you've started off and you just keep going for a few years and, you're worried about getting a job and just getting started, and your kind of motivations and your focus is a bit different. And then I think there is a point where people kind of go, oh, is this it? Is this what I'm choosing? Is this what I'm going to keep doing? And people feel stuck. There's a real sense of kind of people feeling kind of stuck in where they are and what they do. And that's sometimes where we need a bit of perspective in terms of kind of reminding ourselves, probably, how long we're all going to be working for, that you can change, that is possible, you can unlearn and relearn. I think sometimes people don't believe it about themselves. And we probably need to tell more stories and share more stories of kind of going, it is really possible, and we can do different things, and we can try things. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. There's other things that we can do. And it's interesting when you see, there's adverts I'm sure lots of people have seen in the past couple of weeks encouraging people to perhaps retrain and reskill.
Oh, yes. I think people in this room might have seen those. Which one are you thinking about?
Let's not avoid the topic. I find it interesting. I think maybe it should be the other way around. If we think about what are the skills that we really need that are really unique to us, where we can add lots of value I kind of get Mark's point around he's got a very kind of strict definition of creativity, and I think that can be really useful. But equally, in all companies, they're all going to have new problems to solve. They're going to need people to think really creatively and not be as worried or too preoccupied with efficiency and productivity, which I think are metrics, and that's perhaps gone a bit too far for people. And you've got so used to being overwhelmed by email, and we see so much. For some people, that kind of the stress and the overwhelm is just massive, and people are burning out more commonly than they ever have before. And so actually kind of giving people that opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe one of the things that you need to retrain in or we need to relearn is actually how to be creative. If we're kind of saying that that's possible, exactly as we've kind of talked about, kind of relearning what it is to be my 3-year-old toddler who, when he gets his Play-Doh out, he does a better job than I've done, today. And so I think giving people, I think, that freedom to be able to explore and experiment. I think people feel like they are very contained, and there's a bit about being given permission. I think people feel like they definitely do feel they need permission, and there's a big barrier in terms of self-belief.
I think it's I think that permission is a really interesting one, and I think two things get in the way. One is judgment, self-judgment. Oh, I'm no good at it, or I'm not as good as that person over there.
Comparison. Yeah.
Or I'm not going to earn a living from it. And neither of those things really are really what creativity is about.
Yeah.
You don't have to earn a living from it, and you don't have to compare yourself to other people or feel that you have to be a professional.
And I had a third thing, Kenneth, to your list, which is, I think, as a crisis of leadership too. I think we look to our leaders to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And I think the crisis in leadership is they don't have all the answers, and the very best leaders, I think, are creative in that they're brilliant at asking questions. It's what artists do all the time and brilliantly. If you ask a really crap question, you get a really crap answer. If you ask a question like, should we leave or remain in the European Union, you get perhaps an answer that's...
For example. A mythical question that could be asked.
Yeah.
Or what should we name this boat? Boaty McBoatface. If you ask a crap question, you get a crap answer. If you ask a set of really brilliant, iterative, creative, artistic, freeing questions, you get some extraordinary and brilliant answers from right across your workforce. And that's the role, I think, of the creative, and bringing the role of the creative into leadership is really important.
I think you're so right there, David. But I think the other thing that was, as you were both of you were speaking, that occurs to me, is also that thing about vulnerability. You know, you cannot, go into that creative mode and not feel, oh God, what if I don't like it? What if they don't like it? What if it's just rubbish? Or what if I can't do it? Or, all that. And I guess the older you get, you have to allow yourself to continue to be in that place. I mean, as a dancer, it's interesting, I knew what I wanted to be by the time I was in my mid-teens, and I was lucky enough to be able to pursue that. By the time I retired from dancing, I was 46 when I stopped dancing. It was quite late. A lot of dancers have stopped 10, 15 years earlier. But then, of course, what now? And the idea of having to, and athletes go through that, I'm sure, that sense of who and what am I going to do now, and am I going to be any good at it? Because actually I've spent my life being good at that, and now I'm not sure, and I'm still not sure.
I had a brilliant story. Someone told me, and I assume this is true, so I'm going to kind of take it as being true, about lobsters. Sounds a bit left field, but bear with me. That lobsters obviously have their hard shells, and then when lobsters grow, they get those shells just kind of come off. And then that's when they're at their most vulnerable, but that's when they grow. So there's this point about vulnerability and growth, and then you kind of, yes, you do need your kind of next shell to protect you, but actually for us to really be able to kind of get that growth, it kind of goes hand in hand with that vulnerability. And I think now vulnerability is starting to be talked about much more, kind of generally in terms of going, vulnerability is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness, so we're reframing it. The other thing I think that I see when I've spent kind of more time in kind of more purist creative environments is how brilliant creative people are at constructive criticism. And I think that's what's needed more as well in organisations. So I've been on a course the last 6 weeks learning to draw. And one of the things that being part of that group where, without wanting to compare myself, I was the worst drawer by some significant margin, but that group was, it was unique, and I was thinking, this is so interesting. If you could create this environment more commonly in organisations, it was incredibly supportive, and incredibly critical in a very supportive way. And everyone was kind of holding their ideas very lightly, and they said that was one of their kind of principles, like, I really believe in your ideas, but then kind of hold them lightly, and you're all there to kind of help yourselves get better. And I thought there was something about the creativity of those people and kind of what we were doing and spending our time doing that I rarely observe in organisations, and I think would be incredibly useful as we're kind of navigating all of this squiggliness. Hence, I think we all need to learn creativity. Let's reskill in creativity, not in cyber robotics or whatever.
Marco.
Can I jump in? Am I able to jump into this? There's so much wisdom just shared amongst all of that. I loved a lot of what I just heard there. One of the things I want to say is I'm just going to keep on being firm to my definition of creativity, the expression of an original idea that provides value. So drawing is being creative. And sometimes when I do a class, I show some street art. That's creative, right? You can see some street art, it's creative. And then I show a street art on a shutter of a baby smiling on a window shutter. And that for me is creativity. And the reason why is that particular piece of street art was designed to stop street crime. Putting a baby on street art on a shutter had a purpose. The purpose was to reduce street crime. When you saw a baby in that street art, you were more likely to behave. It had a purpose. So I think it was David that mentioned earlier the idea that there needs to be a problem to solve. I believe that there are 4 things needed when we are being creative in the creativity moment. 4 things. 1, knowledge. We need to bring knowledge to the table. And I can be more specific about that later if there's more time. 2, a problem. We need to solve a problem. That might be a problem we know about or a problem we don't know about, but there needs to be a problem. And there's a saying, isn't there, that a problem well defined is a problem halfway solved. If we could be clear about what problem it is that we're attempting to focus our energies towards, it's more likely to get our attention. The third of those 4 elements is divergent thinking. And there are thousands of techniques. And my students who are working on your brief have just learned 7 of several hundred that we're going to teach them this semester. They're basically like learning your scales, like learning how to move your fingers across a fretboard. And the 4th is collaboration. It's sort of what you're doing on that improv stage. Those are the 4 elements of creativity. And what I love about creativity is a transferable skill. So we can take it into any boardroom or any floor, any office, any warehouse, any stage. Creativity, those 4 elements, they're absolutely transferable. And what's most important right now, and I think for the rest of our careers, squiggly careers, are transferable skills.
Yeah.
So creativity is beautifully transferable.
And I hear creativity kind of, the posters you were referring to for the people that may not be living in this, the currently United Kingdom, were some posters which showed people about to pivot in their careers. And there was a picture of a ballet dancer that they said she's going to be in her next job, she's a coder, she just doesn't know it yet. She's a computer coder. And I think one of the things that people react to a bit is this notion, a sense of hierarchy, that she'll move from doing something kind of fluffy like ballet dancing to doing a proper job. And I think probably we've all had that kind of, when are you going to do a proper job thing? But what I hear you saying is we need to rethink of creativity and raise its stature as a kind of meta skill that we're going to need everywhere. I just want to pivot for a second. I hate that word, but I just used it. There it is. That's improv. And Antonia and Ruby were joining us from Nairobi. They have a kind of unstoppable energy, but maybe the internet is slightly kinked up. There's a kink.
Not Wi-Fi in Nairobi.
Okay, no, there's no Wi-Fi in Nairobi. But there is a film that they made. They went out. Can we show the film? Because we met Antonia on the last green room, and she was such a kind of creative, bucket of sunshine. I said, could you go out and just show creativity in action on the streets of Nairobi? And they quickly shot a film on their iPhones, her and Ruby. Can we have a quick look? It's a couple of minutes, and I just think it validates everything that's been said so far.
Today was an interesting day. Thank you so much for that, Tonya. Thank you,
Street. Exactly, and Street Wisdom for giving us the opportunity to walk about and look for our creative spaces. And so we went to a couple of our favorite spots, and actually went to Westlands, which is like the heart of Nairobi for us anyway. I mean, I don't know if it is for everybody, but it is kind of. Right?
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of where the creativity pops. Anyway, so recently, in the last 3 years, there's been this new venue called The Alchemist. What about The Alchemist do I like?
Yes.
So I think the first thing that that I really liked was the trees. The fact that, there's so many ways to build, and people in Nairobi don't literally just cut down trees when they're building buildings. There's a lot of construction going on.
That's
but
right.
Alchemist has been able to incorporate the old house, keep the trees, and it's also just so creative how they've done it. I loved it. They were conscious of their carbon footprint. They have working with communities and conserving wildlife as well. That was super cool. So it's also just when people think that they can't think of climate change and business as well, it's no, not really. Actually, there are people who can do both, and they had really cool things.
They
like the
Kiondo, which is a Kikuyu basket.
Yeah.
A traditionally woven sisal basket by Kikuyu women, and it represents so much.
So the Kikuyu Kiondo has patterns. Traditionally, they mean something, And there's such a thing as Kikuyu cosmology.
It actually is the way that the Kikuyu mapped their world and made sense, and what forms balance in between the individual and relationship with the entire community.
And cosmos. And then we actually ended up in a kibanda, which is the typical street food. They're kind of nooks. They keep getting shut down actually by the government, but they keep reappearing as well. So do the market people. They keep getting shut down and they keep reappearing. They're like resilient.
Yeah, you know, Kenyan cultural craft, really creative. They're not captive. They come hard at you. They sell. It's called the Maasai market, and the selling is powerful because they know this is what they live on, and it's really important to them.
So that's really interesting. So we're not actually really captive.
No, we're not.
So thanks those guys for doing that. I'm sure we'll hear from them another time, but they're super passionate, and they've got this unstoppability about them, which I think is... Also, I'm kind of, by the way, a little bit proud of us. You know, it's not so easy to be doing what we're doing tonight. A lot of people are not doing this. I just want to, you know, it's great you've schlepped out here to the... To King's Place, and thank you guys for saying yes, because creativity takes something, and it takes perhaps a little bit of swimming upstream. And I wanted to sort of nudge it on a little bit, because there are people out there and organizations out there doing incredibly creative work. And I just thought it might be nice, in the same way that these guys kind of bigged up the Alchemist and the street traders, I just want to invite you guys, sort of dropping this on you a little bit, but could you think of anybody that you'd like to do a shout out to? People that are, you know, plugging away, often against the odds, at not such easy times, and you know, could do with a little bit of a spotlight, a little bit of love. Sarah, you're smiling. Can you think of someone?
I think lots of people need a lot of love right now. But one of the people that I've known for a long time is a lady called Pip Jameson. So Pip Jameson is the founder of a company called The Dots.
The Dots.
The Dots. And The Dots is it's a way of basically curating loads of creative people. So you go on, and rather than sharing like your CV, you share your portfolio. You share the kind of the work that you've done, the projects that you've worked on. So I'm sure Mark and his team will be quite familiar with it. So say you've worked on an ad project, rather than just saying, because obviously most creative projects are collaborative, if not all of them, there's the kind of the ad, and then there's like, right, who produced it, who edited it. And so it's kind of about sharing the work that you've done, who collaborated on that work, and it's a different way, I think, of finding people to work with, but also people to hire. And I think, you know, the creative industries, particularly I think people who have been working freelance in creative industries, which is a lot of people, there's been a real trend towards people wanting to do more freelance work, and that was probably last year in particular. And then they've just been, you know, they've been hit with a really hard year. And I know that Pip was talking to me about, you know, the numbers of people that they've seen drop off in terms of freelance work, people having to stop projects, kind of creative people just needing support generally. So I think if you've not looked at the Dots before, go onto the Dots, see the portfolios of the people of the work.
Pip Jameson and the Dots.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mark Lewis is nodding. Kenneth.
I would like to, flag up an organisation, not because they necessarily are struggling, although having said that, everyone has been hit by the pandemic. And this is an organisation that works with musicians, and it's called Chineke, ! Chineke is an Igbo word.
Chi-Chi's.
Yes, an Igbo word from Nigeria to do with creativity and all things good. Chineke is a foundation, but they run Europe's first majority black, Asian and ethnically diverse classical orchestra. And there's a senior professional orchestra, which sometimes has, you know, between 60 and 75 players from all over the world. There's also a junior orchestra. If any of you watch Britain's Got Talent, the junior orchestra got through to the semi-finals recently, where they had 60-plus musicians playing a beautiful medley of pieces put together with no music and no conductor. And Chi-Chi the director made a very particular choice about that because, you know, he said, if you've got a conductor and someone waving their hands about, the camera will focus on the conductor, and she wanted the focus to be on those brilliant young musicians. Chineke, what's Chineke about? It was really about celebrating and championing diversity in classical music. Classical music and classical ballet have a lot in common, especially when it comes to the lack of diversity. They've been so homogenous for so many years. When you go and sit in the concert hall, it's quite, you know, you could quite often not see a single person of colour on the stage. They set about changing that, and I was lucky enough to be at their inaugural concert in 2015. I'm now a trustee, but long before that. Their inaugural concert in September 2015 was in the Queen Elizabeth Hall. It was sold out. And then when you walked in the auditorium, you just looked at the audience, you thought, oh my goodness, it suddenly looks like the city we live in. It looks representative of London. It was so mixed. 3, when they walked on that stage, there was something about just seeing, 60-odd musicians of different ages, different heights, some with grey in their beard, but I talked to a 15-year-old schoolboy afterwards who was so talented. It was like seeing something for the first time, and the audience gasped. We literally gasped, myself included, and we actually gave them a standing ovation before they played a note. But the most crucial thing is these were world-class players, and when they played, they finished with Beethoven's 7, but they played lots of other pieces. And what Chineke does beautifully, as well as commissioning new works, it will play works by living or dead composers of colour, people who you should have heard of but you've not heard of. And so actually a great illustration, there was a recent BBC 4 documentary presented by Lenny Henry and Susie Klein called Black Classical Music, The Forgotten History, or A Forgotten History. Brilliant. Chineke featured in that, so you could get a good insight into them, but also some of the composers that we should have heard of, like Samuel Coleridge Taylor or Joseph Bellon, sometimes known as the Chevalier de Saint-Georges. Yeah, brilliant. So, and Chineke, just on Monday this week, the South Bank Centre started to do their first concerts, and there were some people in the audience, but a very limited audience. But it went live on Radio 3, and it's also going to be streamed on Chineke's website on the 23rd of November. So it'll be on YouTube on 23rd of November. And it included a world premiere by a young composer of colour called James B. Wilson and a poet called Epsiode. And it was, the inspiration for that piece was, if you think back to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations and protests, there was a moment that some of you well may remember because it went viral, when in one of these clashes, there was, I think he was a member of the English Defence League and a former policeman, but a white guy got in a situation where he might have been in trouble. And next minute, a group of black men who were friends and together rescued him, and one of them put them across his shoulder. Big strapping guy called Patrick Hutchison put him across his shoulder, and this image that went viral, and it seemed to speak to so much. So this piece of music was inspired by that. And what I like, I mean, it was a brilliant piece, beautifully done. Yomi, the poet, was performing live with the orchestra. And I think it did so many different things. It was a piece of art in its own right, but it also made classical music absolutely relevant to this moment. Not just a historical piece that was written a few hundred years ago, it made it of the now. So Chineke, please look out for them, give them lots of love. I think you'd be very inspired when you hear them and see them, both the professionals and the young ones. And thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. What I'm taken by is both of you, how you light up when you're talking about somebody else's creativity. There's something infectious about it. By the way, if you're out there on YouTube, on Facebook, and you feel that there's somebody or some organization that also you'd like to put the spotlight on their creativity, then please put that in the comments column, and we'll do our best to amplify it. David Micklam.
I'm going to sound like a one-trick pony, like I've only got one group of people I'm thinking about, but I'm thinking about the 250,000+ people in this country who make up the vast majority of our freelance theatre workforce, many of whom have had no access to any support since lockdown first began in the middle of March. They keep our industry going. Every time you go to a theatre, 70% of the people who've made that show happen are on freelance contracts. And unlike the people now who might be in employment and have been furloughed, these people are struggling. And without them, we risk losing them to jobs in IT or jobs in defence or wherever else we're meant to be all working in the future. And these people are the beating heart of theatre. There's a brilliant voluntary group called Freelancers Make Theatre Work, hashtag Freelancers Make Theatre Work. They're doing some extraordinary work to really kind of maintain the profile and the passion of those people at the very centre of the conversation about how we get out of this awful situation. As many of you will know, our theatres are closed at the moment. Most of them are closed at the moment. And there's a real risk that unless those people are supported, there'll be nothing to go on in those theatres in 6 months, 12 months' time when they reopen. So we need to find a way of supporting those extraordinary people, not just the actors who appear on stage, but the costume makers, the wig makers, the stage management, all of those incredible people who've committed so many hours above and beyond to making stuff happen. And we're in danger of losing them. So let's find a way, freelancers make theatre work, of keeping them in gainful employment.
So it's almost unthinkable. I mean, thank you for that, David. It's almost unthinkable, isn't it? But if we do lose those people to the profession, it's hard to imagine what the future could look like. It could be enormously bleak. And, those are the thing is that, coming back, we were talking about careers, you don't go into the arts. Very few people go into the arts for the money.
Yep.
And you start...
Just so you know, guys. They've been waiting.
Is that your jag outside?
They've been waiting for the money to come down.
And often you start. And I'd say, I was lucky enough to, as a professional dancer, to say that I had a vocation for the first 25 years of my life. It felt like my calling. It felt like that was the thing I had to do. And if you're lucky enough to have that, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in the arts, but I think that is a privilege and it's a gift. And so those, for people to suddenly drop that, and of course they're able, intelligent, skilled people. Of course they can do other things. It's not that they can't, but why waste that?
Well, they very often have been. I mean, most of us have been
that's also true.
But it's one thing that strikes me. I hadn't thought about it till now. Is that maybe there's something about creativity that looks easy when people do it. That it looks as though it doesn't require support, and then we forget that there's enormous amounts of invisible support, structural and educational and otherwise. So was it Churchill? Someone said to him, Prime Minister, could if we're going to win the war, we could sell off the National Gallery treasures to finance the war. He said that if we sold off the treasures, why were we fighting the war? So I think I hear in your recommendation a reminder that this is important, and it's not a.
It's not a nice to have.
It's not a nice to have.
Essential part of who we are as human beings, yes. Arts and culture, and it's on the brink. It's on the brink. By arts and culture, I mean the formal, subsidised part of arts and culture is on its knees, and we need to find a way of supporting it.
So I'm coming to the audience now. Audience. They're just, have you noticed, they're just primed. When I say audience, they cheer themselves. And so you should. Way! This is like the Pirates chorus. We'd love you. I know that Improv are keen to sing a song, to sing an instant advert. Yeah? About an individual that you know in your lives who's doing creative stuff. It could be your local baker, if you have such a thing. It could be a car mechanic. It could be anybody. And you could make it up as well, because it's enjoyable to watch Improv have to get out of trouble. Does anyone have someone that genuinely they think, God, they really are creative and deserve to have a song sung about them? Yes, Fritz.
Dominic Lawrence, fantastic choreographer and dancer, was doing kind of urban dance classes in London, but also around the world, usually around the world, now more in London. And he's a great man that also supports people mentally and emotionally and really puts a lot into his classes. But I know struggles because of the time that we're in.
So Dominic Lawrence, a contemporary choreographer who does urban dance, did you say?
Urban contemporary.
Urban contemporary, yeah, got that, urban contemporary. So that's one option. Tim.
My wonderful nephew, who's autistic and very, very friendly, and he's taught me, he goes around and says hello to everybody.
He says hello to everybody.
Including the bus drivers.
Including the bus driver.
Everyone in Croydon knows him. So
everyone in Croydon knows him. And his name is?
His name is Matthew.
Matthew, autistic, goes around Croydon and speaks to everybody, including the... And he says?
And he just says hello.
Hello.
He goes into shops, and your shop's lovely, and people really respond.
Your shop's lovely. That's great. So we've got two, and one other, just so we can hear. It's another chance to big somebody up. Yes.
A gardener. A garden designer called Joe Hosking, who, Joe McGarry, sorry.
His nom de plume.
Joe McGarry, yeah.
Just Joe, it's fine.
Joe, she's brilliant. She does loads of design, beautiful gardens all around our neighbourhood, and they all look gorgeous, and she needs a lift.
So she needs a lift. Joe, the landscape garden needs a lift. Matthew, is it Matthew? Matthew in Croydon, saying hello to bus drivers, and Dominic, doing wonderful work, choreographic work around the world. I'm going to let you guys choose. Who deserves an impropera song sung about them? Well, of course they all do.
It's very hard to choose. I like Matthew.
I like Matthew.
Matthew is the ad for now. So let's just hear a little bit about Matthew if we could.
London is so boring. Londoners don't talk to one another.
Hello.
London is so dull. Why won't anybody say
Hello.
But what is this? Who is he? He said hello to me.
Hello. It's the easiest word I know. I say it everywhere I go. Hello.
Hello.
I don't say no, I just say hello.
So that one's for Matthew, and maybe if we stay on later, we might do one for Dominic and also for Joe. Do you know what I'm going to suggest is that this feels like a good moment to finish the formal show, yeah? I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we should finish the show right now. We should thank everybody, and what we should do is we should move straight into the after party. So if you're out there on YouTube in the land of the golden screen, or on Facebook, and by the way, you may be wondering, where is Susie? If you're part of the psychology is massive, the tribe, you might be wondering, where is Susie? I just wanted to say to her, no concerns, Susie's fine, but she is self-isolating, just to make absolutely sure. Her son was sent home from school, and so she's fine. She's on a barge near here, and I'm sure is waving a hello to you, so no concerns there. But I'm going to suggest that we say, that's the end of the show, and we applaud wildly, and then we move swiftly into the after party, where we can relax even more, and maybe we'll hear from SCA what ads they came up with, and maybe Joe, you can tell us a little bit, wow, what you're up to. So everybody, well done. We got through the show. If you need to go now and cook dinner or watch a mini-series, that's fine. We'd love to have you. Otherwise, please stay with us for the after show. Stretch, everyone. Stretch. It's lovely to get rid of the performance anxiety, even there wasn't very much performance anxiety. I hope you people at home also have no performance anxiety. So here we are, off-grid, even more off-grid than we were before. And we've been having fun, and we've been enjoying it. We've been letting the conversation unfold and the ideas emerge from between us. But while we've been doing that, there have been 6, I think at least, young people whose lives have been turned into a living hell because they have been trying to honor the brief that David set, which is clearly dear to all of our hearts, which is how we're going to release some money into the theatrical community by, I think, November the 1st. And we'll need some theatre professionals because the lights have just gone out in our theatre. I'm not saying Bruce isn't a theatre professional, but he's an intern, lifelong intern. No, Bruce, just goes to show, in some ways that's going to make things better and certainly less hot. So, Mark Lewis. I've got to say, by the way, we talk about creativity as being a kind of lovely, probably, you know, mauve-shaded, perfume-scented thing. But if you hang out at the School of Communication Arts, as I have as a mentor, it's brutal, I've got to say. Brutally, lovingly brutal, but no, as you said, no mental health no lasting mental scars. But I'm hoping that you will, Mark, not pull your punches, as it were, and let's just see what raw material your students have come up with and where the real value, as you put it, is. And let's also make sure that the winner gets 100 points. Would that be okay?
100 points?
I think 100 points. What do we think?
100 points.
I think 100 points. I'm reliably informed that's something worth having, but you'll explain. So, Marco, have we got anything to look at yet?
I think we have. I don't know if you've got some magic elves in the background who are going to do a screen share or not. If not, I think I might be able to do it. But let me know if you can see a screen. Oh, something's happening.
Yes, indeed. We're seeing something here, yeah. We can see Boris.
Yeah. Whoever the magic elf is, if they can click the present button. Yeah, oh, look at that.
Look at that.
We will just flick through these in just a moment. But just to explain kind of what's happened is about an hour ago, David set this brief, I think, and I think in front of us are about 24, we call them scamps. They're vomits of ideas, like the first thoughts of ideas down onto a page for us to discuss. Mr. Pearl, sir, how many people are with you at the moment? Is there enough for us to hear applause when there's an idea that we like?
Well, let's just test that. Is there enough to make applause?
So what we'll do in a moment is we'll ask your magic elf to go through the 24 or so slides, slowish to hear the applause. If there's an idea that we particularly like, maybe one of my creators will turn their microphone on and explain the idea. Maybe not. It's all theatre. Who knows? At the end of this, if you can choose a winner, did you say 100 points, David? I mean, that's...
I know it's out there, but I'm going to say, what do we think, yeah? Definitely 100 points.
So just to explain, in my school, points equal pound notes. Every point is a pound that student earns to spend on alcohol, pizzas, books, whatever. So some student tonight is about to win £100 worth of Heineken. That's what you've done, David. So that's what's happening with the points thing. Shall we go through the deck?
Let's do this, yeah.
All right, Mr. Magic Elf, would you go just click next maybe every 5 seconds or so until you hear applause?
I tell you what, let's just make sure, we'll read it out just to make sure that we can all understand it. So it says, Boris, learn the correct lines before the deadline of 1/11/20. I will find freelancers in theatre. Said with gusto. Action.
Fund freelancers. I'll fund.
I will fund. So thank you very much. You're sitting closer. You do it. And but what is the name of our elf? Would it be Mark or would it be David? Or okay, never mind. Coronavirus has decimated theatre. Cough up the dough. Whoa. Support freelancers in theatre by November the 1st.
There's a line there, isn't there? Cough up the dough is an interesting line. Oh, this looks good. This is a scam.
The Comedy of Errors has rung for far too long. Fund freelancers in theatre by November the 1st. Ooh, nice picture as well. Sarah will read this because she's got a great voice and she draws well.
Keep the elites in check by giving us a fair check.
Very wordplay.
Satire is powerful and they know it.
Okay.
I personally really like that one.
Keep the elites in check by giving us a fair check. Wordplay. So, yeah, moving on. Et who brute? No freelancers, no actors, no audiences, no shows. The arts need your support. Yay! To eat or not to eat? That is the question. We love it. Freelancing theatre need every year. We want to meet the creative that did this.
Yeah.
Are you still there, whoever made this? Stick your mic on and take a bow.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Who's that? Who is it?
Freddie. Hey, Freddie. Nice one.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. One hell of a Halloween hangover. Save the arts by 1st of November. We like that. Dick Whittington. Yeah, Dick, not Whittington. You turn back before November the 1st. Oh, you turn back. Nice. Biting satire. Don't ask us to rethink, reskill, reboot. Support, support, support. That's a valid answer at McDonald's, I believe. Yeah. Receipt. Rethink, no pounds. Reskill, no pounds. Reboot, no pounds. No pounds. Support, £5. Support, support, support. Yay. Much ado about nothing. They want to do much to save the arts. Will you? They won't do much to save the arts. Will you? Donate. What do we think?
I like that. I like the crowd.
David's got it. There's a nod there. Yeah. Moving on. Just trying to see. Can you read that, Sarah?
I think in the picture it says like actor, freelancer, as in like 535 BC 2020. It's not too late to save the arts.
Donate by November the 1st. Needs work. Keep going.
Yeah, I think there's an idea there, isn't there, about it being an extinct exhibit. There's a good thought there.
Great.
I think that's my bad delivery there, I think. Not the bad idea.
Yeah, we've got to work harder here. David Micklem, could you read this one for us?
Without my glasses, no.
Okay. Benedict Cumberbatch is James Bond. Your favourite film actors came from the theatre. Keep theatre alive to make sure you'll have new favourites too. Put pressure on the government. Waiting for Govdo. That is, there's a punster there. You wait for one grant, then many come along at once. From your mouths to God's ears, as they say. Waiting for Goddo. Yeah. Don't let this be the only one. Don't let. Oh God. Brexit. Don't let this be the only shit show you see. Support, support, support. Yay! Very balanced metropolitan audience here. Just think of the ones we're loving the most. Next production, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Flats. 2nd of November, Theatre Royal gets knocked down. Ooh. That's painful. Yeah. JUCN status threatened. Only 5,000 left in the wild. Save the arts. Donate. This is IUCN. Okay. Omnishambles, the future 9 Tony Award-winning play yet to be written about the clusterfuck that has been this administration. Donate by November the 1st to secure a future where omnishambles can exist. Save the arts. I love this one. It's kind of an animated one with a beard. That's an amazing one. So looking back, which one did we like? Which one did we love the most? We like. Okay, so shit show's one.
I like the one with the E one.
Omnishambles. Et tu brute. That's my favourite, but just because it's my show doesn't mean it wins.
I like to eat a lot.
So we're liking the Shakespearean, although it's a bit niche. It's a bit niche. I'm going to come back to our client, David. You set this ball rolling.
I think Et tu brute.
Et tu brute, we think, gets the golden Fig Newton. We think in 100 points goes to Et tu brute.
I think to be or not to be is the one line of Shakespeare that probably everybody knows.
Yeah, to eat or not to eat. Yeah, so we're loving that one.
Right.
But Mark, you are in a way, it's your school. What do you think?
What do I think? I think there were so many good ones there, David, weren't there?
Yes.
Oh my God. So look, I would like to have brought a couple of bits and pieces together. I really loved the Comedy of Errors. I think it was one of the early ones that came in. That it's run for too long. I could see that being a really interesting poster. There was a really interesting thought there. I thought the Et tu brute was really strong. I thought the shit show was great. My favourite was Flats. Like that urgency that it's true, isn't it? That building on Drury Lane or Shaftesbury Avenue or Haymarket just might end up being sold to a pension fund to create an Airbnb setup.
Makes it real.
I mean, that's the truth of the matter is that's what's probably going to happen if we don't get this sorted. So I loved that one for that reason.
Okay, so what we're going to do is the client here is agreeing, but what I'd like to do is to double the prize money and make sure that the other 100 gets distributed.
You are a man with generosity pumping through that 6'5" frame of yours.
So thanks to the SCA students, thanks to you, Mark.
Bravo. Thank you.
So we're nearly done here, but behind my left shoulder, an act of creativity has been happening. And I just turned around and I was like, holy my gosh. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to find out what Joe's been up to. You've been sculpting in clay as we've been doing this.
I have.
Should we take a little bit of a look? So what have you been doing, Joe?
Well, I've been 3D scribing the conversation as best I could. It's what the things, it was a lovely way the conversation twisted and turned, and the idea of careers and developing ideas, I think sort of informed my thinking. There were some standout moments. We've got Mark talking about he wants to have a Nobel Prize winner that makes advertisers making the world a better place. That's my little Nobel Prize thing here. We've got divergent thinking on our standard bearer, and also original ideas that bring value. We've got sort of sense of resilience and fragility that the arts bring. I was trying to bring out here. We've got ponies, horses running from the Improper crew, and improv and the love of improv, and sort of fingers pointing all around, because we're all creative. So there we are. That was this evening's conversation.
Have you ever done this before?
No, I've never done this before. It's a first, what can I say? This is not my normal thing.
And looking at
but
it...
I've had a lot of fun. I mean, it's been an interesting process, actually.
Yeah.
I love the fact that clay can be made into pretty much any shape. It's the most flexible and organic, and it's under our feet and available to us all. So I love to share it. And
can I just say as well, it's a beautiful thing, but it's the doing that's the really exciting thing, isn't it? It's a verb.
Yeah.
Creativity, I think, is a verb. It's the doing that makes you feel human and happy and all those things.
Absolutely.
Do you want to say a little bit about Rage?
Oh, well, shout out, I need your help, viewers. I am in the process of making a project at the moment. It's called All the Rage, and I'm sort of tapping into what it feels like in certainly the UK, a sort of sense of anger about what's been happening recently. And so I set myself the challenge to sculpt 100 heads expressing a sense of rage and fury, because I need to feel my friends around me and a collective mob that are going to come together and defend things like the arts and health for all. So this is Morag, who I sculpted the other week, and she's an opera singer, and she was expressing absolute fury. So if you want to help me, send me mugshots of yourself. You can take them on the iPhone, HD please, front and both sides, and then a rear view, because it's quite helpful to see the rear view of the head. Email them to me, studio@joepearl.com. I'd love to receive them, and I'll include you in my creative rage. Thank you.
Hurrah! So transforming rage into beauty. And I just want us to finish up. I wonder whether in Proper we have an anthem in us. I asked at the beginning of the show, or even before the beginning of the show, if we could think about completing the sentence let's. There's something very creative, very active, and it's about, as we've been talking about, it's about taking creativity and making a dent on the world, making things better, making things more beautiful, making things move ahead. Anyone got any what would be your let's sentence, David?
Let's give our inner 8-year-old permission to run through the fields and the streets.
Let's give our inner 8-year-old permission to run. You have our permission, David.
Thank you.
Any letters from the audience? Let's
flow.
Let's
flow with life.
Let's flow with life. That sounds fantastic. That's not the sort of thing that you often hear in London.
It does.
Where is home for you?
Home is London for me.
Perfect.
But as well,
Thank you.
My heart as well is in Spain. So I'm
In Spain. How do you say flow with life in Spanish?
Fluye con la vida.
Oh, wow. That sounds so much better. But flow with life. I think we might be able to work with that. Any other let's? If it was written on your gravestone, let's.
There's one from YouTube.
Which is?
Let's make squiggliness our superpower, from Norman Furlong.
Let's make squiggliness our superpower. I always feel like this. The motto for this show is "Let's dance like no one's watching."
I was thinking
because the chances, but the chances are no one is. Is the second one. I think "Let's flow with life" is such a beautiful, sentiment. I wonder whether we could sing.
Fluye con la vida.
Fluye con la vida.
Fluye con la vida.
I wonder if I might come and sing with you. I'll come and sing
go
with
on.
you.
Yes.
When you are small, when you're not tall, everything comes easier to you.
When you are small, things don't seem scary, like reaching your arms and saying, I feel lucky, I feel glad.
So inside you, no, after you, I won't interrupt again.
Please don't interrupt him.
I wish you'd sing it, 'cause I can't think it. My mind is all in pieces, so after you.
I see you're in such strife. What you must do is flow with life. Flow with what she said.
Life is so much better when we flow.
La vida.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Come again. Next Green Room, sometime in November. We'll be feeling our way. I think it's the 23rd of November. Vanessa, what else should I say at this point?
Sign up for updates.
Sign up for updates and subscribe. I haven't said it this time, but I'm going to say it again. Light us up, right? That's what the young people say. So subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Tell your friends. This has been the Green Room. See you again soon. Stay well. Stay well. Stay happy. Thank you. Thank you, Antonin. Whoa!
think we're out. Thanks, Mark.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. Good to see you. Students, if you're still there, I'll see you in the school tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye all.